declassified, I can go back in and I can solve these things. And when no one else is looking, I'm looking. So to me, that's fascinating.
So for you, how do you choose a case that is intriguing? Do you just pick a name out of the blue and say, today I think I'm going to look into, how Prince died or how Robin Williams died or something along those lines? Or does there have to be some sort of intrigue to it?
I look into all kinds of things, and I write about what.
You seem to have cut out, Steve. Steve, are you there? We cannot hear you, Steve. Hopefully your phone line did not die. Or your computer line did not die. Boy, we're just having all sorts of fun tonight, aren't we? See,
Black people did not die.
Oh, there you go. You cut out for about 20 seconds, my friend. And now you're gone again. Seriously. Oh, there we go. Let's try that stream.
How's that? Are we better?
Now we got you.
Yeah, that was weird. I was in the middle of a sentence, and all of a sudden, everything went black.
It's conspiracy, man. It's conspiracy.
I know they're out to get me.
There you go.
What was the last thing that you heard?
You were just going into the intro on how you choose a case.
I dig into all different kinds of history, and for me, the ones that I write about are the ones that are the most obvious. So I think it's fascinating that, and I look into all kinds of history. I just love it. You have to be obsessed by it, like I said before. It's not about money. It's not about, like Michelangelo didn't do the Sistine Chapel for the money. You have to be inspired by it. So I'm inspired by digging in and revealing things, and these subjects that I write about are the ones that, for me, are just absolutely the most obvious. And I write these books. There's so little justice left in this world. I write these books to set the record straight because these people have been horribly maligned in history. And I think if Princess Diana and Elvis Presley and Franklin Roosevelt could read my books, I think that they'd smile and give me a thumbs up, because I think I'm finally telling the true story as opposed to the official fiction that we've been taught throughout history. I call them Easter Bunny stories. That's what I call them.
So your accounts of these incredible stories that you write about, where are you finding different information that, say, the police or detectives have not, or even the media for that matter?
Well, I don't know if they have any sort of a vested interest in telling us the truth in the first place. I think there's a lot of things that people just can't handle the truth about, and they skirt around the issue. In the case of FDR, 50 years after he died, no one was looking when his cousin came out and she published the White House, the diaries, her presidential diaries, and said that Dr. McIntyre said that he was being poisoned, and they couldn't figure it out. The case has been long closed for 50 years, and then things like that come out, and then you can piece together, evidence that has been revealed since then. So when no one else is looking, I'm looking. Declassified documents, deathbed confessions, things that are published afterwards. This is where I put together my special sauce on these books.
It's something that you obviously enjoy doing, looking into these true crime type stories. What's the rush of it for you?
I just think that I'm a history buff, and I write about things that are fascinating to me, and it just so happens that they're fascinating to a lot of other people. I don't really sit down and say, what's going to be popular and what isn't. I'm really inspired by what I do, It's just one of those things for me.
Jeffrey's wondering if you've ever looked into the Christopher Reeve case, and if so, what you think the story is all about.
I I was gonna write a book on that one, but one of my friends was doing it, and I'm not gonna put my nose in that trough because he's writing one. I think it was very suspicious. There's been a lot of the great question, by the way.
What's
there's been a lot of
suspicious
things.
What's suspicious about that?
About Reeve?
Yes.
Christopher Reeve? I just don't think the circumstances surrounding it were natural. In the same way that Sonny Liston is another one that who died very mysteriously. You have these in this Princess Diana book. I have what I call threads of insanity. All of these high-profile celebrities and high-profile people have the same sanitized death scenes. They have planted evidence to spin people off. The people who are supposed to know what they're doing when they investigate these at high levels in the government suddenly forgot to do their jobs. The autopsies are a joke. The autopsies are done before the cause of death is announced before the toxicology reports come back. That happened in the case of Elvis Presley. So all of these things, and they're listed in Who Murdered Diana, the book that we're going to discuss here in a minute. All of these things have these threads of insanity that goes all the way through them. Even JFK. JFK is getting his brains blown out, and the body is taken. They take his body into Parkland. Secret Service is washing the blood splatter out of the limousine. Nothing like sanitizing the death scene, so there can't be an investigation. Elvis Presley's death scene was sanitized. So if you look at all of these little threads that go through all of these things, it's kind of hard to ignore after a while that all of these people just suddenly forgot how to do their job.
Kaysen brings in a good point here in our chat room about Jimi Hendrix. There's a lot of people who believe he was murdered as well.
I've thought that for a long time. That's out there on the web. I actually know someone who's tight with the Hendrix family. His brother is still alive, and I have poked into that a little bit, and I was asked kindly not to look into it any further. So I kind of took my cue from that.
Well, with 90 seconds to go here before we go to break at the bottom of the hour, what kind of cue were you given?
I'm sorry, you broke up. Say again?
What kind of cue were you given on not to investigate or write that story?
Someone in their family is working on that story, so I was told. So eventually they're gonna come out with their version, and I try not to step on toes if I can. So
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. I mean, you don't want to steal the thunder if somebody else is doing it, because then in the end you either look like a copycat or a thief, right? Like there is no winning either way.
Right. I like to, I don't want to be that guy, so I like to get versions no if I can, I like to go where most people haven't gone and haven't come up with what I've come up with. So.
I mean, the good part about it is you're never done with the subject matter.
Actually, I have one more book after this one, and I'm going to call it a day.
Really?
I've been doing this for 12 years. And it's been a great run, but it's time to move on to bigger and better things. I mean, the amount of work in these books is just staggering. I had 10 years into Elvis Presley.
Right.
I had 4,000 hours of research and writing into this Diana book, and it just they'll never be profitable. It's impossible.
All right, Steve Ubaney is our guest tonight. True crime. We are looking into a brand new book, Who Murdered Diana? The true story they don't want you to know. WhoMurderedBooks.com is his website. You're going to check it on out. Spaced Out Radio continues the second half hour right after this.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron.
All right, we are clear. We are clear. Just a reminder, the audience can hear us, Steve.
Well, that's great. I just wanted to remind everybody, you're up in Canada, And if they wanted to buy books, that would be kind of expensive to get up there. So I wanted to tell everybody out there that I'm on ebook and audiobook as well with all of my books. So if they wanted to get my work, they could always get it that way. I don't want them to spend all kinds of...
Most of our audience is in the U.S., so you're safe there.
All right, bravo.
Uh-huh. There we go. See, we make sure we take care of you, man. Make sure we take care of you.
You know, I'm in the Buffalo, New York region, so I have friends in Toronto, and I'm up in your country all the time. So lots of neighbors to the north, lots of friends up there.
There's some okay people over there, as long as they're not Maple Leaf fans. You know, they're the dangerous ones.
No, I'm a Boston Bruin fan. So.
How do you live in Buffalo and be a Boston fan?
Years ago, there was a time where hockey existed before the Sabres.
True.
Sabres didn't come in the 1970s, so we were watching something. I was a little kid. You know?
Very true. Very true. Spicy Cat Design, otherwise known as Genster, welcome to our chat room. Rono welcome back. And Sonny from Paranormal Chop Shop, appreciate you coming on in. And let's see here. Who else do we have that's new? That's it so far. BBD Warrior and Solar Warden, nice to have you both here. Appreciate you. Man, out of all the nights I didn't want, because I was starting the new feature tonight, and of course it has to not work properly. But what do you do? What do you do? We'll make it work. Sorry about that, Steve.
Not a problem.
There, now we're kind of getting... Now my computer is actually starting to run. All right. I think we're almost there. Oh, no, we're going to pause now. Yeah, there we go. All right, there we go. All right. Let's see here. Lots of good ones. So I can't believe you're retiring after one more book. Have you chosen your final subject?
The next one's going to be on Nikola Tesla.
That'll be a good one. We're definitely bringing you back for that one.
Yeah. The Tesla's, the circumstances surrounding his death were incredibly suspicious. And the disinformation out there is incredible. They're saying they have a horrible picture of an old man up there saying it was Tesla's last photo, and of course it's not him. And all of this is being put out there to cover up, what happened to the guy. He got stuck between some governmental forces with some weapons he was producing.
It is kind of weird. Definitely would love to bring you back on for that. You have to
anytime.
Make sure you pencil us in for that one, man.
Anytime. I don't remember if we ever did this Elvis Presley story or the
No, we did not. We did not.
So
So
I have.
We got like 3 new interviews to do with you before you call it the day.
Anytime.
I think though, dude, you're a writer at heart, and I think that maybe I'm speaking out of tongue here, but I think that you'll find your happiness somewhere and restart on something different.
I'm just gonna, when I say I'm moving on from writing, I'm gonna move on out of this venue. I'm gonna write about other things. I don't want to get typecast. I always thought that these books would be perfect to be produced into a series or a movie or something for Hulu or something like that. So I do have a couple of contacts. Anybody who's out there who knows those people, have them call me. Let's talk. I do have a contact or two, and we might be making that step here sometime soon. But I have to finish the series for that to happen. So I was going to do a JFK book, and I actually have some interesting information into that.
Oh, wow.
My James Snyder, my cousin, was a presidential guard for 4 presidents, and JFK was one of them.
Oh, no.
And he was in Washington, D.C. when the assassination happened, and his job was to his job was to guard the limousine before the feds took it over.
Wow.
So I have a first-hand account of where all the bullet holes are.
Hold on 1 second. Here we go. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate it. I want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, you know where to find it, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot, reading Shirky Poo's Newswire, checking out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and now on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We continue on tonight with author Steve Ubaney. He's got a brand new book out called Who Murdered Diana? The True Story They Don't Want You to Know. This is part of his Who Murdered Books series and the website, whomurderedbooks.com. Before we bring Steve back in, one of our longtime loyal listeners has a big-time birthday today. Duke from World Bigfoot Radio turned 60 years old today. And Super Duke, happy birthday from all of us at Spaced Out Radio. Thank you for the love and support that you give this show, not only on your channel, but being in our chat room each and every night. We love you, man, and happy birthday from all of us right here at SOR. Steve Ubaney, Princess Diana, how did you come up with this topic, my friend?
And it was one of these things like Elvis Presley. I never believed it when it happened, and I don't care how many times it was repeated. And it turns out my instincts served me well. There were things that were not investigated. They dropped the ball big time on lots and lots of things that were revealed later. So, once again, decades and decades after, when no one's looking, I'm looking. So we can go back in and we can really tell the story.
Well, let's rewind to late summer, right before the Labor Day long weekend of 1997. Take us through what happened there.
Do you want the real story or the official fiction?
Well, let's give the official story right off the bat here.
Okay. Well, the official fiction, or so it was told to us, is that Princess Diana was pregnant, and Dodi Al-Fayed, who is son of an Egyptian billionaire, who was a very successful businessman who had business interests in Britain, was going to propose to Diana because she was pregnant with his baby, and he was going to propose to her, and the restaurant was too busy, so they went back to the Ritz Hotel, which Dodi's father owned, and they were trying to escape the paparazzi, and they snuck out the back door, and a guy was drunk who was driving the car and hit the 13th pillar in Ponte Alma Tunnel. And that's the official fiction of what happened.
My goodness. And now, what have you uncovered?
Well, that story should be taken out of the library wherever they have it and put right next to Mother Goose, because there's no way this is possible for this to happen. Interesting thing that happened to me when I was writing this book, I made a comment on a social media site that my next book was going to be on Diana. And I got contacted by someone who was using a screen name, and they said they're from a little place in France. And they said, my mother, who recently passed, has been investigating this for 10, 12 years. Would you like the information? And I said, oh, man. My book was already 3 months late, and it was already done. So I almost said no. So they sent me this information, and there are photographs now that are in my book that I don't think anybody else has. Also in this book, which really was a capstone of some of the stuff that I had uncovered, 40-some days before the crash, this person was at the Bilderberg conference outside of Atlanta. it's 45 days before the crash, and the plot to kill her was actually overheard by people she was obstructing their route to riches. So that really opened the door to a lot of things that I wouldn't have had access to. So the names of the people who were in that meeting who wanted to have her killed are mentioned. You'll never find that anywhere else. So there's a lot of things here that it's in my book that aren't anywhere else. Princess Diana was getting death threats. She was using a body double. Some of the photos that were sold to the paparazzi, or sold by the paparazzi to the mainstream media in the U.S., were not even Diana. So, all of this, came about through a lot of investigative work. They were saying that she was showing, she was pregnant with Dodie's kid. Their relationship lasted exactly 4 weeks. It's impossible to show a baby bump at 4 weeks. At 4 weeks, if you're pregnant, your baby would be about the size of a poppy seed. So all of this legend and lore is kind of ridiculous. I'll give a little background, if it's okay, as to how this whole marriage started and how all this nightmare scenario for Diana actually happened. The biggest conception about her is that she was a commoner. She was not. She was actually royalty. And Princess Diana and Prince Charles were cousins. They go all the way back to 1327. This is boring, but history nonetheless. Princess Diana was actually by lineage royalty in France and by marriage royalty in Britain. So she was a Spencer. Her father was the 8th Earl of Spencer, and they were generations of careful breeding to be the wedding stock of the royal family. And Prince Charles was actually dating Diana's sister at one point, and that somehow went south. So he ends up with Diana, who was a little bit younger and is now is of age. And the Queen actually approved Diana for the marriage because she had all the hallmarks of a future queen. She was of the right stock and the right breeding. She was a virgin. She was well-mannered. Here's Prince Charles, who's romantically involved elsewhere, who he's actually married the woman now that he was involved with since 1971. So he's 32 years old at this time. She's 20. Pressure is now coming on him to sire male children and keep the monarchy going. So that's the backstory on this whole affair and how all of this came into being, and it never should have. They were completely mismatched. Princess Diana was very, very sad. She was trying to commit suicide before the wedding. He was romantically involved elsewhere. There's just no way this could ever end well. So that's the backstory on this whole thing. So then the divorce happens. They were both behaving badly. And this queen is a pretty smart lady. She's pretty sharp. She probably wanted to clunk their heads together like something in a Three Stooges movie, because the tabloids were having a ball with both of them. She was behaving badly, he was behaving badly, and the tarnish that was happening on the crown just was not good for anyone. So there became a time where they had to go their separate ways. After that happens, Diana is trying to reinvent herself, and she's attaching herself to causes. And the causes and the jilted lovers building up to the crash are what cost her life. The first cause she got involved in, she tried to make herself into this Mother Teresa supermodel sort of figure, and she did a really nice job of it. She was really something else. She could play the media like a fiddle, and it was just unbelievable how she could pull this off. So the first cause that she got herself involved in was the AIDS epidemic, and she's going around the world breaking all of the social mores of people who have AIDS or are suffering from that affliction at that time. You know, she's holding babies infected with AIDS and touching people with AIDS, and of course that was taboo back then. They didn't know what we know today. So here the pharmaceutical industry is trying to come up with a vaccine to vend to these countries for this horrible disease, and she's out there showing everybody how terrible it's not. So she kind of got in the way of them vending their vaccine to multiple countries. So they weren't necessarily thrilled with her. She quickly moved on to a landmine ban. She couldn't stand the idea that long after conflicts and wars are ended, these landmines are unaccounted for, and people are stumbling on them and getting blown up. And you kind of have to agree with her. So she started the International Campaign to Ban Landmines, the ICBL. And I'm going down the list of suspects to this murder. Okay, the first one was the pharmaceutical industry. She started this landmine campaign, and she had about 100 countries on board early in 97. One of the things that she did where she got, the first time I think she really got threatened was in July of 1996, where she goes to Angola to, again, get some press on this anti-landmine ban and cause a media stir to, be seen with children who are missing limbs to get, to work the media and get the other countries on board. Because at that time, the United States wasn't on board. There were a couple other countries that weren't on board, who later did get on board with this. So there's a man out there named Alan McGregor who had been given interviews in the UK, in The Sun, in The Mirror, and a couple other ones. And this is quoted in my book. And I tried to get a hold of Alan McGregor so I could get an interview, but the guys, I couldn't find him. I hired private investigators to find him and couldn't find him because I really wanted to get more information. He states in his interviews that he paid £100 million to people in Angola who were threatening to kill the princess when she got there to do this media event. So there's a lot going on here. And again, you don't know this when this crash happens. This is something that rolls out later. I think that interview is, 5 years old or something like that. There's no way that would have been told at that time. So Angola is a nightmare for her. August 18th, she goes to Bosnia. Same thing. A big media spectacle trying to get other countries on board with her anti-landmine ban. This is 13 days before this murder happens. And finally, President Clinton joined the other global leaders and signed this treaty. The timing of her death was pivotal. September 19th was supposed to be the date that they were going to, it was the final date for this anti-landmine ban. All of the countries were going to ink it, and they were going to move forward with it. There was no way that she had to be taken out before September 19th. So my list of suspects are obvious: the royal family, the paparazzi, the international arms brokers and/or the military-industrial complex, and the pharmaceutical industry. And there's a couple jilted lovers in here. So this is the list of suspects that I gather from my book. And all of my books are written the same way. I gather the people who have the axe to grind, and I run them through the criminal process. Motive, means, and opportunity. So I kind of let the evidence write the book. I keep my personal likes and dislikes out of it, and I just follow the evidence where it goes. My book is different because, to my knowledge, everyone who has written books like this have been from the UK or that section of the world. and they were looking at it through the lens of the royal family. I'm not transfixed on the royal family, so my conclusions are a little bit different. Actually, the royal family was the first people who were dropped from the investigation, and I'll tell you why that is. The royal family only has a couple jobs. They're obsessed with having boys and keeping the monarchy going. That's what they do. They want to have as many male children in there as they can, because 500 years from now, they want to keep their lineage going. This is what they do. So that's their first priority. The second thing that they do is they appear as dignitaries in ceremonies, and they behave in a regal fashion, and they keep up appearances. And the third thing they do is act weird and stay away from people. That's what they do. They have three functions. They enjoy the fruits of the vine, and they act stuffy and weird and stay away from people. And to me, it doesn't really matter around the world what kind of government you have. If you're a communist or a socialist or a capitalist society, you want complacent people. They're easy to rule. You don't want uprisings. So if the royal family, in my estimation, had everything to lose and nothing to gain by trifling with Diana, so they would have been they're upset with her. They wanted her to shut up and go away, and they were probably elated that she had met somebody and she was moving on, hoping that she would get this out of her system and stop being the scorned divorcee that she was. So it's interesting side note here that all of these people knew each other from birth. There's only so much royalty in that country. The Spencers and the royal family had known each other for generations. The Alfied family had known the Spencers for generations. In fact, when Diana's father died, Dodi's father used to check in on the family to make sure that they were okay, and they'd see if they needed anything. Or actually, he went on to employ one of their relatives at Harrods. He owned Harrods department store. So there's no strangers among these people. They all know each other. And again, these are things that come out through digging. This wasn't told to you when they told you that the paparazzi did it, and then of course later the driver was drunk. They only tell you what they really want you to know. This is why I call it the official fiction. So this is the backstory to this. Not only is she getting threatened by other countries, she's being threatened from within her own country. Diana's life was in grave danger, actually. In 1995, she was driving an Audi, and she suffered brake failure. That almost killed her. There were people after this woman. There were two or three warnings, actually, that came from in the country of Britain. Two by newspaper, one by Earl Howe, who's a British defense minister, who put a warning in the newspaper and told her, we don't need this woman, she's a loose cannon. She needs to stop. That was kind of a casual way of saying, knock it off. Peter Viggers was a politician, a member of parliament, who put something in the newspaper, and I think it ended up in the tabloids as well, telling her that you don't add a lot to the sum of common knowledge. You don't know what you're talking about when it comes to the international arms and the sale of international arms. You need to stay out of it. And she continued. I don't know if she thought it was a joke or a game or what, but she continued on this trek. The final one came by phone, and it's in the Pageant Report. It's covered in the Pageant Report. The Pageant Report was basically the British damage control document, which mirrored very closely to the Warren Commission report. I think they used it as a pattern for the Pageant Report, who reinvestigated Diana's death later on. And this came in February of 1997. Nicholas Soames was a British Armed Forces minister who said, quote, and this was overheard by someone else who was in the room, "Don't meddle in things you don't know anything about because accidents can happen." That's a pretty telling quote. So she's being warned to knock it off, to the point where she pens a letter and gives it to her attorney, saying that if anything happens to me, MI6 is going to be the one who murders me. Her attorney keeps this thing and holds it. And nobody ever saw that letter until after the pageant report and the inquest was done. I don't think that MI6 was involved directly in that, because in my estimation, if MI6 wants you dead, they're not going to warn you. They're just going to take you out. Anybody who's trying to warn you is trying to keep you alive. I think what happened was there were about 5 or 6 people involved that were hired to take her out, and they were using intel from many different countries. And I think that these people were trying to warn her off. I think that they were hearing things from the back channel, and they were telling her, you need to stop. You're in over your head. I think the military-industrial complex had a lot to do with it, especially in my book where I outlined the meeting at the Bilderberg conference. Just 40 days or so before she died, they laid it right out on the line. And
let me stop you right there for a second. How did you come up with that information from the Bilderberg meeting?
Actually, that was luck. Every now and then you get lucky. This was mailed to me by the packet of information from the people in France. They're the ones who uncovered it. So I get this packet of information. It's like 300 pages, and it has photographs and everything in there that I don't think anybody knows or has ever seen. And I couldn't give them credit in the book because they never revealed who they were. I go back on the social media platform to acknowledge the fact that this packet came to me and I did receive it, and they had removed themselves as a user. So they really didn't want anything to do with it. They wanted it to come out, but that was it. So I was kind of stuck with this information, and I actually debated, wow, what do I do with this? Do I use it or not? And I decided to just tell the truth. When in doubt, tell the truth. This is what I got. This is what it says. And, let the story write itself. I think that 99% of the people on this planet, I think, are nice people. And I think that we're basically tolerant of each other. And I don't think we bother each other very much. We have different belief systems and so forth. But we also have to come to the realization of the fact that there are bad people in this world, and they do not share our values. And these people are out there for hire. And I think she got across, frankly, she pissed off the wrong people. And she got in their line of fire, and they tried to warn her off. There are countries in this world whose entire gross national product depends on the sale of arms, be it legally or illegally. There's not a lot of money in peace. There's money in war.
Not. Healthy people and peaceful people are not profitable people. And on that note, Steve Ubaney, we are done hour number 1 on Spaced Out Radio. Hour number 2, we're going to continue the talk about the death of Princess Diana. I think it's one of those days where we all remember where we were back in 1997 when we found out the People's Princess had died. Was it a car accident? Was it murder? Author Steve Ubaney, WhoMurderedBooks.com is the website, and his latest book, Who Murdered Diana, the true story they don't want you to know. We return on Spaced Out Radio right after this. All right, my friend, we're clear.
Fantastic.
That's a good half hour right there. Solid radio.
Yeah, you have to love what you do, and I'm one of these freaky people who just does. But it just takes so much out of you to write these books. It's a lot.
Do you ever get threatened?
No. That's every now and then somebody will, especially with the Elvis thing, because people just loved Elvis, and and myself included. I've got to be the biggest Elvis Presley fan on the planet, but a lot of times people don't like the idea of that, and even the evidence rubs them the wrong way. But it's evidence nonetheless. That one we'll have to cover at some point in time. The only backlash I've ever gotten is, people who are stuck with their confirmation bias. And it doesn't matter how much evidence you present. They're not going to move from, their love affair with Elvis or their love affair with Diana. And some people just can't handle the truth. And that's the truth, some people, like to believe that there's a Santa Claus and an Easter Bunny. And
very true.
Sometimes, the truth hurts. The truth hurts.
Very true. Very true, my friend. We got about, what do we got here? About 4 minutes. How
long have you been doing this, Dave?
Well, we've been doing this now. 7 years. 7 years. Hard to believe.
Yeah, I know you've been on a while, because I think it's been 3 years since I've been on your show.
Mm-hmm.
I disappeared for a little while.
We got you back. That's the main thing.
Yeah, I was thrilled to be back on your show, because the first show I remember was a really good show. You have those memories of the good shows and the bad shows.
I appreciate that.
And yours was a great show, and I'm like, wow, I wonder if this guy's still around. So I was just thrilled to be asked back on.
Well, absolutely, man. Absolutely. We don't do enough true crime. We really don't. And, especially the last couple of years, we've been so caught up on this whole UFO story that it's really been taken over. Excuse me. Pardon me. It's really taken over our entire subject matter with everything. So it's very, very difficult at times to try and find something else. And, it got to the point where if we did any other topic outside of UFOs or cryptids like Bigfoot and Dogman, that our audience numbers live would literally drop by almost half. It was crazy.
UFOs are, it's interesting. I've met a lot of people in MUFON down in Dallas, actually, because I go down there for the JFK conventions and conferences. And I've had some sightings myself, and we've talked about that at length. And it's to the point now where UFOs, it's becoming almost mainstream. The government's finally out there saying, here are things and we don't know what they are, whereas 60 years ago that would have been unheard of.
Right. My cousin Gary, who's in the chat room, sweet Gary C., he's got one hell of a nice mustache. His mustache, believe it or not, is actually older than him. And he's wondering if you have any audio books available.
I do. All of my books are available on audio, except for this recent one, except for the Diana book. I haven't got to it yet. I have been, like I was telling Dave here just a little while ago, I've been on a show a night sometimes too, and it's keeping me busy to the point where I can't finish the audiobook. So I apologize. I'll get there with it. It's on ebook right now. But Who Murdered Elvis, the 5th anniversary edition, and Who Murdered FDR are all available on audiobook.
Right on. Right on. Yeah. Everybody give a shout out to Cousin Gary and his mustache. 2 separate entities, 2 separate area codes. Cousin Gary is a 780. His mustache is a 403. That's what I'll say right there. That's what you get for living in Alberta.
So you're getting some snow up that way. Huh?
Oh, yeah. We only got about 4 inches. It's snowing beautifully right now. I love it. I love it when this first snowfall. Now, the crappy part about it is this snow that is here now will also be here in April, but that's okay.
Yeah, you get some serious snow. I'm in the Buffalo, New York area, and we get lake effect snow. But in the last few years, it's snowed like crazy, and then it's gone. It's not like it was when I was a kid.
Right. Same as near Vancouver. 1 second here. Big thank you to Jeffrey DeRue and times 2, Thomas and Smithy for the Super Chats. The Super Chats are a wonderful way to support what we do on this show. If you love Uncle Gary's mustache or Cousin Gary's mustache, hit up that Super Chat because we could get him a new mustache comb for it. Here we go with hour number 2, everyone.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Thank you for joining us. My name is Dave Scott. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Axissimus. Axissimus. There it is. Axissimus is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you, including Rockin' Out to Bumblefoot, reading up on Shirky Poo's Newswire, and check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and now on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Yeah, Bree is doing a great job with our TikTok, by the way. Hey, we're continuing on with a little conspiracy theory tonight. Author Steve Ubaney is with us. Got a brand new book out. It is a series called Who Murdered. WhoMurderedBooks.com is where you can find them. Who murdered Princess Diana? Who did it? Was it a murder? Was it a car accident? This is what we're finding out tonight. And Steve, we welcome you back. And I want to go back to 1997 here for a second, my friend. Do you remember where you were when you heard the news of Princess Diana?
I do. How about you? Is this a memorable thing for you?
I actually do. I just got over nose surgery. And by the way, anybody who does rhinoplasty as something that they just figure they want a new shape of their nose, don't do it. It's the worst pain ever. But I couldn't breathe out of my nose because old Davey used to play hockey really rough. And, yeah, you get in a couple of fisticuffs, and the next thing you know, your nose is broken and you can't breathe out of it. And when you're in broadcasting school, that is never a good sign when you can't breathe out of your nose. So I had to get my nose fixed. But in the meantime, I was working part-time at a sports bar in my town, doing some nightly DJing on the weekend and keeping the tunes cranked. And I remember I had a bunch of my classmates from college in there. They were all drinking it up. I was spinning the music, and all of a sudden it came across, on, at that time, CNN actually reported news. And they came across that Princess Diana had died in a car accident in the tunnels heading to France. And everybody was, like, the entire bar absolutely went silent. Completely silent. How about you? Where were you?
I was in the pool in Las Vegas, Nevada with my girlfriend. And my neighbor comes running out and says, "Oh my God, Princess Diana just got killed in a car accident." And it was one of those moments in your life where, well, the world took a collective gasp, first of all. And, you never forget where you are. 9/11 was one of those days. I'm old enough where I remember where I was when Elvis died.
That's old.
Yeah, I know, man. I'm pushing it.
I know. I'm just teasing. There.
But, you have these moments in your life where you'll never, ever forget where you were. And I thought then, I don't know, I just had a hunch. I said, man, something doesn't sound right with that. Just the way they were reporting it, and they were all reporting the same thing. And reporting it wrong. The first story, you gotta love it when the stories change. The first story was that the paparazzi killed her, and then that didn't wash because they had no case against the paparazzi because you know what? They weren't there yet. I'll get into that in a minute. I'll have to recount and actually give the actual story. And then it was the driver was, they changed and they had to do the Oswald thing. They had to blame the dead guy, So they'd blame the driver, and they maligned him in history as being, quote unquote, drunk as a pig, which has never made sense to me because I've never seen a drunken pig. Anyway, so
I want to ask you. I want to ask you about Henri Paul, the driver. Was he intoxicated? Because that sounds when you're with dignitaries such as Dodi Al Fayed and Princess Diana, you're paid to drive them around. You're not paid to sit down at the table and have a few drinks with them.
Henri Paul's an interesting figure. And again, these things come out decades and decades and decades later. Some of this information was uncovered by me. Some were uncovered by other investigators. And when that is the case, I always give him credit for the work. I'm not that guy. I give him the credit. Henri Paul was not. He was not intoxicated on that night. They have film footage of him tying his shoes, walking up and down stairs. The level of intoxication that they claim he had, along with carbon monoxide that was allegedly found in his blood, the guy wouldn't even have been able to stand up. So I don't know what sample they were testing, but it wasn't Henri Paul's. And as a matter of fact, there's a picture of the vial, his toxicology report, the blood vial that was going out to be tested, and it was so badly done. His name is even misspelled on the vial. His sample's not even out of the autopsy room yet, and already there's a mistake. So, dead men tell no tales. They also don't get attorneys, and they also don't sue you. So you can blame a lot on a dead guy. It's like I said, the parallels between the Pageant report and the Warren Commission report, I run them down in the book. It would take way too long on this show to go into it. But Henri Paul's an interesting figure. He was identified by a guy named Richard Tomlinson, who was a retired MI6 agent, as an informant for many governments. And he was paid because many celebrities did stay at the Ritz. He was head of security at the Ritz. He was a guy who was paid a handsome wage to leak information on certain people back to governments. The Saudis, the Americans, the British, they knew this guy well. The guy was also a commercial pilot who had just renewed his pilot license a couple days before the crash. And he's a very interesting fella. At the time of the crash, there were $22,000 on this guy in his pocket. Well, their equivalent. Obviously it wasn't American money, but, their monetary equivalent of $22,000. So he has been really horribly maligned in history. And it's a shame. And I raise in my book, in 97, we had this thing called DNA. There's blood all over the car. Why didn't anybody match the DNA blood from the car to the blood sample to see if it was his blood they were testing? This was unbelievably how poor that the investigative work was. So, should we go back to the night and tell the real story?
Sure, let's do that.
Okay. Okay, so what really happened is Dodi El-Fayed wants to take Princess Diana out to dinner. If he was going to pop the question or not, I don't know. It's been debated both back and forth. We'll never know. The only fact that remains is that they wanted to go to this restaurant called Chesbonnet in Paris, which is a very popular, very posh restaurant. And the El-Fayeds have their own security team because they're very wealthy, very important people. So they have their own security team and their own limousines. And that day they had 3 of them, which is traditionally what's done. You have a lead car, the middle car is where the dignitaries are, and then you have a follow-up car. And they do this with most motorcades because it's the best way in a motorcade to protect people, unless it's a convertible. So the El-Fayed security team does what they're supposed to do. They go to Chesbonnet, and they are checking out the crowd to make sure everything's cool, because she's been getting death threats, and they're a little scared about this. So they look in the crowd, and they see people that don't belong there. Now, this is summer in Paris. There are people there with stocking caps on and winter clothing, heavy jackets, and they're like, well, wait a minute here. These people aren't tourists, and they're not paparazzi, because the El-Fayed security team and the security team at the Ritz know each other really, really well. They pay each other back and forth for tips. So, like, the security team will pay paparazzi for tips so the paparazzi can vend their photographs, and then they'll give them a kickback. So these guys know each other well. They know who the paparazzi are and who they are not. These people are not paparazzi. So they get the word back to Dodi. This is probably not the greatest of idea to go here. So they decide to turn around and they go back to the Ritz, where Dodi and the princess had gone to the Imperial Suite, where they always go. It's familiar to them. They go back. Dodi makes a phone call to his father and is reporting this back to him. There's some problem, with some suspicious characters. We decided to stay here. And Muhammad El-Fayed said, great, good idea. It's so dangerous. There's so many people out there. Everything you need is right there. Just stay there. So the driver is dismissed. 15 minutes later, the driver comes back, according to witnesses, and tells Dodi, we have a problem. The same people are now in the lobby at the Ritz. We don't know what they're doing here. Some people are out front of the Ritz, and the pictures of them are in my book. You can take a peek at who these people are and what they look like. We don't know what they're doing here. We don't know who they are. This is suspicious. This is dangerous. They could blow the building up. We have no idea what they're doing. We've got to get the princess out of here. So they devised this plan that was told to Henri Paul. We've secured a route. Take the princess out the back door. Put on a little show for the paparazzi waiting at the front door. Sneak the princess out the back door. We've secured a route. Where there'll be very little traffic and you won't have any problems. Great. So they do it. They get the car. The only car left in the motor pool is a Mercedes S280, which is a very, very nice car. Mercedes-Benz build tanks. There's wonderful automobiles. And they all pile in. Henri Paul starts down the road. They get about 500 feet down the road and they realize they've been horribly misled. Now there's motorcycles surrounding the car. And these are high-powered motorcycles, people dressed in black, and they're trying to assassinate the princess. So the driver has no idea he realizes he's now a sacrificial lamb. So there are 2 tunnels on the route that they had secured. The first one was a tunnel in the Riverside Expressway, and I won't bore you with the names, but there are 6 witnesses who gave testimony to the French police, saying all the same thing. The motorcycles were surrounding the car. They were wielding weapons, because this Mercedes doesn't have tinted windows like the Alfieds, so they can see where their target is. So this poor driver is doing everything to keep this woman alive. So he floors it. And there's never, ever been a car that's going to outrun a motorcycle. It's not going to happen. The power-to-weight ratio is always in the motorcycle's favor, especially if it's flat road. So this guy's got a problem on his hands. So he starts racing through the Riverside Expressway tunnel. And he's doing a fair job of keeping the princess alive. We come up to the second tunnel, which is Pontiama Tunnel, which is where the crash happened. And now the motorcycles are in front. Again, this is all witness testimony, and it's all in my book. It was gathered. All of this testimony was ignored by the authorities. And it came out years later. Why they ignored this, I have a suspicion, which I'll get into in a minute. Now the motorcycles are in front of the car, and they're slowing the car down. In the way is this white Fiat Uno that is meandering around at a slow rate of speed at the entrance to Pontiama Tunnel. And this thing sideswipes the car. And it causes the car to swerve and spin out. And everybody is like, oh, what terrible luck. Wasn't luck at all. The motorcycles were in front of the car. And now they sell these handheld flashlights that are mini strobe lights. They're tactical flashlights, and they even advertise them that they can disorient an attacker. And they have a hell of a bright, slow strobe on you, and they blind you. This is what these people were doing in front of the car. At the same time, this guy clips the car. This was, if the other plan to kill her didn't work, they were going to crash her out and kill her. So it wasn't by chance. All of this is in witness testimony. Some of the people that I have spoken to personally, their testimony's in there. Other people have gathered testimony. And I've, of course, given them credit in the book for the testimony that they've uncovered. So the white Fiat Uno, who is now part of legend and lore, everyone's investigated this. They did a pit maneuver on this car. And a pit maneuver is something that is done by trained drivers. They started in NASCAR doing this years and years ago, and now the police are doing it. The pit maneuver stands for precision immobilization technique. Why do I know that? Because I'm a geek and I have to know that. Okay, what they do is they just get next to a car, and as the car speeds by, they just tap the back quarter, and it'll spin the car out. That's what happened. That's why they crashed in the tunnel. It was planned. It was a planned thing. They've been doing it in NASCAR for years. The police are doing it now. If you ever see one of these police video chases and they spin a car out, watch how they do it. That's exactly what happened to that Mercedes S280. So they hit the 13th pillar. And it's a hell of a wreck. It really is. But they all should have survived it. The crash test rating on that Mercedes S280 is actually at a higher speed than what they hit this at. They hit this thing at about 55 miles an hour, which is way too fast for that tunnel. But there's a reason he was going 55 miles an hour, and he slowed down to 55 miles an hour. There's a couple witnesses. One of the people that I interviewed and spoke with, his name was Jack Firestone. He was an American tourist who was in the tunnel when the crash happened, him and his wife Robin and their son. And he gave firsthand accounts of what he saw. And that, of course, that's in my book too. So the car has crashed. Car spun out. Motorcycles disappear in different directions. and the Uno disappears in another direction, never to be found again. There have been books that come out that claim that that there are two people potentially who could have been driving that Uno, but to me it doesn't matter who drove it. It was driven. That was the point. It wouldn't matter to me if Bigfoot was driving this stupid thing. The point of it is it was driven for a reason, So here we are. This is where this crash happens. And then the most incredible thing happens. The paparazzi is still waiting for them to come out the front door, because Henri Paul went out and put on a little show and said, we'll be down in 10 minutes. And he went to the other door and left. Paparazzi's still waiting for them to come out. All of the 3 limousines are still waiting at the front door. So they're glued there waiting for them to come out. So by the time the crash happens, there's a few doctors who rushed up to try and help the people in the car. And it was an awful wreck. It really was. The driver and Dodi Alfield were killed instantly. In the passenger seat was one of the security people who was really a hero in my book, Trevor Reese Jones. He just about had his face torn off. That was what a hero for undergoing what that guy did. And of course, behind him was Princess Diana, who got rattled around pretty good. So the crash happens. There are people, witnesses who were ignored, went to they had call boxes. This was before they had cell phones that were common. They were out there, but they weren't like they are today. Not everyone had them. So there was a couple people who went to the local call boxes to call police, and the police just had no interest in this accident, which is incredible to me, how all of the cameras, the traffic cameras, were turned off for this crash. Was it happen that way because they had planned that ahead of time, or was it just a technical glitch? Is anybody's guess. For me, it's just a little bit too convenient. So now, Princess Diana, the photos that everyone has seen of the crash are completely fake, of Diana dead in the car. That's been circulated out there in legend and lore for years. That was filmed somewhere, and it's not even close to being true. I have photographs in my book of what she looked like. People were taking pictures of her through the window. They're black and white. She's upright. She's wincing in pain. And there's someone trying to get to her through the door and open the door to attend to her. And they're not allowed to. There's one policeman on the scene who's taken charge of the scene now, and he's not letting anyone touch anything. One of the people who wanted to help the princess was an American attorney named Stanley Culbreth. And he's another one who gave testimony that was ignored. So the ambulances, so now the paparazzi show up.
We got about 40 seconds. 40 seconds.
Okay. So now the paparazzi is showing up. At the same time, the police are showing up. So the police put 2 and 2 together and come up with 57 and a half, and they arrest the rest of paparazzi. Keep them for 30 hours, take their cameras, do cavity searches, and all of a sudden they realize they have no case, so they blame the dead guy. We got to be at your break.
We do have to be at the break. And when we come back, I know there's a bunch of questions lining up from our audience that I would like to ask some of those to you, Steve. And I know there's still more to this story to go here that you're going to explain as well. So we're going to complete all of that here in the next half hour on Spaced Out Radio. An intriguing night of theory and conspiracy on Spaced Out Radio. Princess Diana. Was it a car accident or murder? Author Steve Ubaney, his new book, Who Murdered Diana? The True Story They Don't Want You to Know, can be found at whomurderedbooks.com. Check it out now. All right, buddy, we're clear.
Sounds great.
This is good stuff.
It should be just about enough time to tell the chapter of this. It's amazing how all of these high profile deaths have the same hallmarks. You know, the sanitized death scene and all of these crazy things, which I haven't gotten to yet. You know, it makes you wonder why crime scene tape exists. If they're going to, it's like butterfly wings. You get one chance to look at a crime scene. Once you touch it, it's over with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but they just can't keep their hands off touching these crime scenes. It's amazing. It really is. All of a sudden, everybody forgets their job.
It just sounds so odd. It really does. Sounds very...
You know, and I'll say this when we come back for the radio audience. Elvis, Diana, Sonny Liston, JFK, Marilyn Monroe, all had planted evidence. They all had sanitized death scenes, and there were all oddities involved medically. All very high-profile people. And they all have, again, in the book I call them threads of insanity, because these threads go through all of these people. But I'll save that for the next half hour. We're going to be wrapped up at 2 o'clock, correct?
2:30.
Oh, great. Oh, perfect.
We got an hour. I know you're all excited about staying up later than what you originally thought, but I appreciate it.
Hey, man, I caught a nap. I'm good.
Good.
You know, it wouldn't matter. I'd do your show. It wouldn't matter what time it was.
I appreciate that.
You know that. But I would love to get a hold of, and there is something in the works with a producer to get some of these, to get all of these books done in episodes. And let's see if it works. You know, let's see if it works out. There's a lot of investigators out there who would add their voice to mine that the other side of history needs to be told. You know, the official fiction is ridiculous and it needs to be told. I was going to do a JFK book.
What do you
you know,
what do you think of all the hype recently about all these QAnon people hanging out in Dallas waiting for JFK Jr. to arrive?
Saw it firsthand. I saw it firsthand. I don't know.
He just didn't arrive.
I don't know what's going on. Roger Stone was down there 2 days ago, and he had a little meeting with them, happenstance. And, you know, I don't know what to think. I do know that when they were down there on the November 22nd, they were doing the moment of silence for JFK. They do this all the time, every year, at the moment of his assassination. You know, I mean, they're like in Dealey Plaza, spinning their tires, acting like goofballs. You know, it kind of brings shame on anything that you believe in when you behave like that.
Right.
You know? Kind of not good. But as far as what they're doing down there, I couldn't begin to guess, you know. But, you know, your conduct has to be a little better if you want people to take you seriously. I mean, you can't be acting like a chucklehead out there doing stuff like that. You know, I wasn't very impressed. But, hey, who knows? Maybe he will show up. I hope he does. I have a lot of questions for him if he shows up.
Right?
You know, we don't ever know these things. It's a wild world we're living in, you know. If you'd have told me 30 years ago that some of the things that we have going on in this world right now are commonplace, there's no way I would have believed you. But here we are.
Oh, I hear you, dude. I hear you. We've got about 1 minute here.
I'm looking forward to wrapping up the book series.
I
I really am.
I don't blame you.
I got my hands full. It's been a great run, but you know what? I'm going to go on a vacation for a while.
Oh, I don't blame you. Okay, hold on here. I just want to say a big thank you to Ghost Dragon, Jeffrey ×2, Thomas, and Smithy for the great super chats. It's a great way to support what we do on a nightly basis here on Spaced Out Radio. So thank you very much. Merle is here, everyone. Merle, Make sure you give him some Merle. Merle it up, people, because we all love some high-quality Merle time. All right, and we're going to get going. Thank you to all the veterans here who are checking us on out. You always have a safe home here on Spaced Out Radio. Here we go. We pass the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears. We want to remind you that if you miss portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. And, of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot, reading Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We continue on tonight. Steve Ubaney is here. He's the author of a brand new conspiracy book called Who Murdered Diana? The true story of what they don't want you to know, or the true story they don't want you to know. And it's an incredible series that includes a book about Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the former president, and Elvis Presley. WhoMurderedBooks.com is the website. Steve, welcome back.
All righty. Where do we leave off?
Well, we were talking about the crash site, how the police... the paparazzi had arrived and the police were immediately starting to arrest the paparazzi.
Oh, yeah. They added things up wrong. So they take the paparazzi, and you have to feel sorry for them because they strip searched them, their cavity searched them, they took all of their camera equipment, tore all of their film up, and this is why very, very little film footage snapshots exist of the crash for that reason. So my question is why? People just don't hide things that aren't worth hiding. What's the difference if they're out there or not? If there's nothing to hide, why hide it? It's like when you redact something. Abraham Lincoln's assassination documents are still redacted. Why? It's like JFK. They released this new information a couple years ago, and it's all redacted. Well, if there's nothing to hide, why hide it? Makes no sense to me. I don't know, maybe somebody out there has an answer with a bigger brain than mine. I can't figure it out. So the crash happens. They take the paparazzi, and they do all kinds of horrific things to them. And they load them into this paddy wagon and chain them together like, I don't know what. These poor people were just talking about being at the wrong place at the wrong time, right? Then they hold them for 30 hours, and they interview them separately and together and separately again. And they realize, we've got a problem. There's no case here. These people showed up after the crash. They couldn't have caused the crash. Well, by that time, the first part of the official fiction had already been gone out to the media channels, which was much smaller then, and it was much easier to control. Of course, it wasn't, we know now that they didn't know anything about the internet or social media, or, the media was much smaller. Big now, wasn't then. So they put out this Easter Bunny story that the paparazzi caused the crash and so forth. Didn't hold true, so they released them. Then all of a sudden, they know they have to lay this on somebody, so they lay this on Henri Paul, and they come up with this story that he was, quote unquote, drunk as a pig and so forth. So while all of this is going on, the Keystone cops show up with the ambulances, and they take control of the scene and do as little as humanly possible. They're spending more time on the dead bodies, tagging the dead bodies, than they are the most famous woman in the world in the back seat. And they clearly know who she is because they're talking to her through the window. But no one's helping her. It just makes absolutely no sense. So finally, they get her out of the car, and she's conscious, and she's talking, and they put her in the ambulance, and now they're on the phone trying to figure out what hospital to take her to. In the end, it would take them almost 2 hours to get her the equivalent of 4 miles. They don't have miles over there, it's the metric system, but around the equivalent. Which is incredible to me because people are running a 2-minute mile. And there are pizza delivery people who guarantee 30-minute delivery. She'd have been better off ordering a pizza and riding back with the driver. She'd still be alive. The whole thing is ridiculous. Ronald Reagan suffered the exact same injury as Princess Diana and survived it. And they say, well, in France, the emergency vehicles are more equipped and they do things differently. That may or may not be true. I can't. I've never been injured in France. Fortunately, I can't speak to that. That's what they claim. People claim a lot of things. Is that true? Maybe. They certainly could have done better to give this woman treatment. So,
was she wearing a seatbelt? Because there is a bunch of debate about whether or not she was buckled into the car.
That she was not. And I'll come back to that in a second because there was a separate person who investigated the car, and I was not among them, but I put his information in my book because it's fabulous information. I have to get to this ridiculous fiasco car.
Sure.
In a second. So they get her to the hospital, and her life is ebbing away. By the time they get her to this hospital, she's all but dead. So they get to the hospital, and there's virtually nothing they can do. Which, to me, well, you can draw your own conclusions on what I might think about that. So now, there's no crime scene tape going up. There's no investigation. There's no nothing. She's pronounced dead. They take the car. You guys said you get one chance at a crime scene. Just one. Once it's touched, there's nothing you can do. So they're not putting up crime scene tape. What they do is they load this mangled Mercedes S280 on the back of a flatbed and haul all the evidence away down the streets of Paris at 2 o'clock in the morning. And they call in special equipment. In my book, there's a picture of it. There's special equipment that they call in to sanitize the tunnel. Scrubbing it down on both sides, scrubbing the street down, and they reopen the tunnel. Miller time, I guess. I mean, how could they possibly do this in any sort of criminal investigation or even a traffic accident? You would think that they would do more, especially with the high-profile passengers that they have. She was not wearing a seatbelt to everything that I have uncovered. Okay. And here's why. There was an investigation done into the vehicle. That vehicle was... a Mercedes-Benz is flipping out. They want to know what's going on because they know what I know, which they told nobody this back then. That vehicle those people should have survived because that car was meant to take that crash with airbags. Why did this vehicle behave differently than it's supposed to? Question asked, question answered. On the pageant report on page 418, and I know that's boring, they say the speedometer was stuck. The French say the speedometer stuck was 121 miles an hour, or the equivalent thereof. The British say it was stuck at 144 miles per hour, or the equivalent thereof. Finally, Mercedes-Benz had to get involved and say, upon an impact, the needle goes to zero. We have both governments covering up and lying now. And in any courtroom in any country, that is the very definition of conspiracy. Don't even look any further. Okay, so the car, very interesting thing going on. That car, a few months before that happened, was stolen from a restaurant in Paris on April 20th, and it was stripped for all of its parts. The thing was an empty shell. The engine was stripped. The relays were stripped.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott from...
Sorry, I hit a button there. I apologize.
Better you than me. I'm pushing buttons here. So, this car is a mess. The electronic brain that controls the power steering, the power windows, the speedometer, and the anti-lock braking system were stripped. So they get this thing back and they rebuild it. Fuses are missing. Relays are missing.
Why would they rebuild that car? I mean,
that's a great question.
I mean, these aren't the type of people who just can't say, "Look, we'll just get another one."
You know, that's the $64,000 question. I don't have that answer for you. So this car is not right, and Mercedes-Benz knows it's not right. So they offer 3 times to inspect this car for defects, and they're rejected. Their offer's rejected all 3 times by both governments. In fact, the only people who inspected this vehicle were people who were paid not to find anything. So a little bit of backdrop into this ridiculous vehicle that they pile the most famous woman in the world. They put her in this? Okay. So now they have the story about Henri Paul being drunk, and he was drunk as a pig, and now we have to go down this ridiculous rabbit hole. Okay. So they start to investigate Henri Paul. Nothing's mentioned about the equivalent of $22,000 in his pocket. We won't talk about that. We'll just we'll fabricate some story that he was drunk. So they go to his apartment and they search it, looking for anything Easter Bunny story narrative that they come up with. And all they find a light. Remember Pepsi Light? Remember that?
Horrible.
This was his favorite drink. He had all kinds of Pepsi Light in his apartment. He had a bottle of champagne in there that was corked, and I think that there was half a bottle of Ricard in there. Not fitting the narrative, so they leave, and they start interviewing his friends. And one of the people they interviewed was his best friend, Claude Garrick, and he said he wasn't on prescription medicines, he wasn't a heavy drinker. He couldn't have been on any of those things. He just got his pilot's license renewed. They never would have given it to him. You have to do all kinds of things to get that license. So they couldn't find anything to support this narrative that they're trying to concoct. So 8 hours later, they go back to his apartment and they search again. And gee, what do you know? They find enough booze there to stock Mardi Gras. They find gin, they find champagne, they find everything but Jim Beam's corpse in there. You know, it's easy to find things when you're the one that plants it. So here comes this narrative. So both, if you follow this rabbit hole down, this guy has just been found guilty in the court of public opinion. He never had a trial. He never had the opportunity of that. Kind of a parallel to Lee Harvey Oswald. Blame the dead guy, no trial. The parallels between these two reports are amazing. And I go through them in the book, and I'm not going to bore you with them here. So the French they do their investigative work, and they ignore almost everyone who comes and tells them about, we witnessed an assassination attempt. They ignored everyone who stepped forward, including Jack Firestone and his wife. Their information was lost somehow, some way. So the French take their information and they hand it over to the British. And this is 97. This happens, right? Well, there's a law in Britain, and it's called Britain's Coroners Act of 1998, and it states that an inquest should be held as soon as practicable. They didn't touch this until 2004. So it's 121 months, and I don't know what anybody's definition is of as soon as practicable is, quote unquote. But I'm willing to bet it's sooner than 10 years, a month, and 3 days.
Right.
They couldn't put this off long enough. And what ends up in the pageant report, it's a damage control document because they've hung this on the royal family. They've hung all this on the royal family, so the royal family's catching a lot of heat. And they have to concoct this document to spin this away from them.
Right.
Because they don't want an uprising. And they're the perfect scapegoat for this. They're untouchable. This was done masterfully.
Bridget wants to know in our chat room, and I'm going to start taking some audience questions here. What is your perspective on all of the security cameras in the tunnels being out that night? It's kind of coincidental.
Well, I would have to agree. I don't know why, but it's awfully coincidental. You know, it just so happens that she was warned by people in the British defense industry. Let's play this game called It's Just So Happens. Okay. It just so happens that she was warned. It just so happens that she penned a letter saying that she would be murdered, which never made it into the inquest, by the way. It just so happened that they had to pay £100 million ransom. It just so happened that suspicious people were in the crowd. It just so happened that the escape car from the Ritz was incorrectly put together. It just so happens that the eyewitnesses to the motorcycles with the guns, their information was lost. It just so happens that the pit maneuver happened from the white Fiat Uno. It just so happens that onlookers were prevented from helping Diana. It just so happens that it took 2 hours to drive 4 miles. You know, it just so happens the media ran with the drunk driver story before the toxicology report was even back. They hadn't gotten the toxicology report. But the word came down, find him drunk. It just so happened that film of the crash was stolen on 3 locations the night after. There were some photographs that escaped. There were break-ins, one at 3 a.m. and one at 1 a.m. at photo labs in and around London. The only thing that was stolen, money wasn't taken, valuables weren't taken, camera equipment, hard drives, and computers were taken. And all of these things, it just so happens. It just so happens that all the witness testimony was lost by the governments. It just so happens that the witnesses were threatened. Dave, I got a question for you. When was the last time you were threatened for witnessing a car accident?
Never.
How about never? Well, these people were. It just so happens that there were 84 lies in the pageant report. The automaker wasn't allowed to inspect the car for defects. And there's like a couple more that I won't bore you with. You can't add all of these things. A couple of them you might say, well, you know, maybe it just could have happened that way. All of these things just couldn't have happened this way, including the cameras being shut off the night of the crash. It's just awfully coincidental for me. The coincidence is too great. Mm-hmm. So I hope that answers her question.
All right. Third Phase of Moon, who are actually former members of the paparazzi, are asking, can we ask you, Steve, what you think about Princess Diana's son's non-participation in finding out what's really happened?
You know, I don't know anything about that. I had heard, and oftentimes I get disconnected. Great question, by the way. My head is down researching things oftentimes too much, and I really don't know what's going on in popular culture sometimes, which is reason number 148 why I'm going to end this book series. I'd like to get a little life back. I know that they have been curious for years as to what's going on. There was something, you can't believe what you read in the tabloids all the time, but I read somewhere over the summer that they had one of the sons had her body exhumed. I don't know how true that is. I certainly can't answer for these boys. And I kind of stay away from talking about them as much as I can because they've been through enough. You know, It's really sad when you're a young man and you have your mother ripped away from you that way. So these people have really suffered enough, and what they think about it, I'm sure I have no idea, outside of what I've read. Yeah.
Miss Pickles is asking, how do we believe anything we are told? Most history is written by dictators that want us to toe the line.
Amen. Napoleon said it best. History is the lie agreed upon. It's true. It's true. I think that we're at a point now where we're starting to question some things. There's a big uproar about Christopher Columbus now. There's a big uproar about the origins of Thanksgiving. We're at this point now in our world where we're questioning things, but I think that we're questioning the wrong things. Christopher Columbus, to me, is kind of an interesting figure, but I think we need to apply that jaundiced eye to more important things, and we're not. This is where people like me come in.
I know a lot of people are asking about whether or not, the rumor was true that Princess Diana was pregnant when this was going on. That was never confirmed, was it?
It was not, and I think that this is something else that all of these suspicious deaths have. They all have planted evidence, red herrings that are planted, and they all have things in common. And I'll run down a couple of these things for you before I come back to their ridiculous pageant report. Elvis Presley, Princess Diana, Sonny Liston, JFK, and Marilyn Monroe. All of these deaths have hallmarks in common. And it would take someone like me who's had their nose in this thing for 15 years to come up with all of this information. Because if you look at one of these things, it's like you're looking at a blade of grass on your lawn. So many more of these, and I'm sure there's more that I haven't even uncovered. Okay, planted evidence. At Elvis Presley's death scene, someone planted syringes upstairs at Graceland. And they were the type of syringes that had no needle. They weren't the kind that you would find at your doctor's office. They were like the cartridge type. They were a skeleton type where you could pop in whatever cartridge you wanted. They were found all over the place. I ended up being friends with Dan Warlick, who was at Elvis Presley's autopsy, and that's covered in Who Murdered Elvis. And Dave, we got to do that story. He took a magnifying glass and looked over every inch of Elvis Presley's body. There was not one needle mark on him. So that was just planted there to spin everybody's attention away. Okay. Diana, photographs where she allegedly was pregnant. And if she was pregnant, no one knows. But it was planted there to spin our attention away from other things. The more time we spend talking about if she's pregnant, the less time we spend solving the problem. This is done on purpose. JFK, the pristine bullet, suddenly emerges off a gurney in Parkland. This is more planted evidence to blow everybody's mind. The photo of Lee Harvey Oswald holding a rifle. And, was it his head superimposed? Did the shadows match? Everybody misses the point. They're trying to condemn this guy in the court of public opinion. They're so busy debating if the shadows were right. No one's asking the $64,000 question is, what is it doing on the cover of this magazine in the first place? Red herrings. Okay. Marilyn Monroe, this one hits the trifecta. This really puts the cherry on the parfait.
Well, let's save that Marilyn Monroe one for when we come back. We have Steve Ubaney for another 30 minutes here on Spaced Out Radio. Princess Diana, was she murdered? Was it a car accident? You can find his book at whomurderedbooks.com and Who Murdered Diana. True story they don't want you to know when we return on Spaced Out Radio. All right, I'm just going to run to the bathroom here. I'll be right back, okay?
Oh, good, man. Do your thing.
All right, I'll get you on mute. Sorry, my pooch decided to come to work. So, it's all good. Lay down, buddy. Excuse me. All right, Steve, we got about 90 seconds. Michael Fontaine, welcome. Gorgeous Coral, welcome back. A big thank you to Smithy, Thomas, Jeffrey ×2, Ghost Dragon, and Bridget for the awesome super chats tonight. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. No, I did not get murdered, Bim Jim. The aliens want to know. No, not yet. Not yet. All right. Don't forget you can do some shopping. We got our new logo up, new t-shirts, new gear at spacedoutradio.com, so you want to check that out. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, and it's going to be awesome because we just keep growing and growing and growing. Malou, your question's up next. And, sorry, Steve, we got about 1 minute here. 1 minute. I timed us out wrong there. Chris Moe, thank you for liking the new logo. Appreciate you. The gorgeous Thin Lizzie Borden, the chairperson of our TikTok channel. She's doing an amazing job. By the way, Liz, your videos were phenomenal this weekend. Great job on those, by the way. Great job. Super Duke, the birthday boy. I've seen the lineup for your Bigfoot show, man. That's going to look good. Look good. Well, maybe if I actually take my mic off mute, all of you will be able to hear me. I said a big thank you to Smithy, Thomas, Jeffrey, Ghost Dragon, and Bridget. I rarely put my microphone on mute. Thank you, everyone. Rookie mistake. All right, here we go, everyone. Let's do it.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
We're trudging through the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. The snow continues to fall at SOR headquarters, but we don't mind. We're warm and cozy inside the studio here. And thank you to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates across North America and digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Axismus. Axismus is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as a clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you, including Rockin' Out to Bumblefoot, Read Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and now on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. For the final time tonight, author Steve Ubaney is here. We are talking about conspiracy deaths. WhoMurderedBooks.com is the website. You can order this trio of books: Who Murdered Diana, Who Murdered FDR, Who Murdered Elvis. This is absolutely fantastic series. Steve, welcome back.
You know, it's great to be on your show, and I just can't wait to get back and dive into Elvis because everyone's going to love what I come up with that. But to continue on, We were at Marilyn Monroe.
Yes, Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, and I see a question pop up. Do I know anything about Epstein and Diana? I know a lot of people through doing this. I consult with a lot of forensic pathologists, a lot of medical examiners, a lot of doctors. I was one of the first people asked to investigate the Epstein thing. And I said, how many no's do you want? And not only no, heck no. I'm staying way away from that. I don't even want to be, I'm not putting my nose in that trough at all.
I
don't know. To answer that question, thanks for the question, but I don't really have any evidence on that. I avoided that like grim death. Thank you.
I don't blame you on that one. No offense. Don't blame you on that one whatsoever.
Okay, back to Marilyn Monroe. She hit the trifecta on this one, and I was talking about Planet Evidence with Elvis and Diana and Sonny Liston. Sonny Liston, they planted drug syringes all around his place, and they poked needle marks in his arm. Unfortunately, there were no drugs in his system. And I mean, Sonny Liston, the condition of his body was the same as Elvis Presley's, nude from the waist down, foaming from the mouth. Tongue bitten half off. Got on the wrong side of the wrong people. Elvis is another story that we'll get into. But Marilyn Monroe is interesting. They tried to stage a break-in, but the glass was on the wrong side of the house. You break in, some glass has to go on the inside, right? Well, there wasn't. All the glass was on the outside of the house. You talk about bumbling through a setup. Sanitized death scenes. Elvis Presley's death scene. There were signs of a struggle. The EMTs both saw it. They take Elvis down to Baptist Memorial Hospital. My friend Dan Warlick, who's now passed, came up to inspect the death scene, to investigate it. Everything was sanitized. They even sanitized with cleanser where he aspirated in the carpet. Unbelievable. Now, that death scene was under police lockdown. So did the police sanitize it? No one seems to have an answer, but it was done. Diana, the tunnel was sanitized immediately after her death. It's kind of crazy. Sonny Liston's wife had the entire place cleaned up by the time the police left and the investigators showed up. Everything was changed. And they claim that she did it. I don't know if she did it or not. JFK, the limo. Now we have a crime scene, right? Well, what does Secret Service do? They get a bucket and 2 sponges and they start cleaning the blood splatter out of the limousine. President gets his brain blown out in broad daylight. I would clean up the crime scene. Yeah, that's what I would do. Marilyn Monroe, again, she comes up again. Investigators show up, and what is the housekeeper doing? She's doing the laundry from the death scene. I mean, these threads of insanity all through the Who Murdered Diana book. I lay these out. The last one are oddities. People just forgot how to do their job. Elvis Presley gets taken to Baptist Memorial Hospital. The first thing they do is take his stomach contents and dump it down the drain. Alrighty then. Diana, of course, we have this mysteriously slow ambulance. Sonny Liston, I said, had no drugs in his body. JFK, they lost his brain. You have to really say this is some special sort of idiot who could lose the president's brain so it never makes it to autopsy. It's still missing. It's never been seen again. Matter of fact, Brad Meltzer did an entire book on Kennedy's missing brain. You can't make this up, folks. Marilyn Monroe and Liver Mortis. Liver Mortis is a stupid sounding name. When your heart stops pumping, the water pump in your body is your heart. It circulates blood. When it stops pumping and you die, blood pools at the lowest level. So if you die on your face, blood will pool on your face and your skin will get a purplish hue. It's called liver mortis. Okay, crazy name, I know. As opposed to rigor mortis, this is liver mortis. Marilyn Monroe's death scene was so repositioned and so phony she had the purplish hue on the cheek that was facing up, not down. It was impossible to get livor mortis on the upside of your face. She had to have been repositioned. She had to have been in a different position. This is just science. So all of these things are in my book. I go into much greater detail there. Back to...
Got a quick question here while we're waiting. And this is from Mr. Gray Owl. Do you have any thoughts or intel on the death of Anthony Bourdain? Could he have been murdered?
You know, I don't know anything about that, to be honest with you. Good question, though. I really don't know about that. It's embarrassing that I don't know anything about one of these high-profile deaths, but, I really don't. He just hasn't come up on my radar yet. And like I said, some things I miss when I have my head down doing this. There are thousands and thousands of hours that go into these books, so sometimes I miss some things. I'd like to revisit the ignored evidence. Diana's letter that she penned in October of '96 that never made it into the Paget report. The Paget report was done. It was done to basically a damage control document, and there was a ton of money spent on this. The Paget report was Muhammad El-Fayed spent over $13 million in his private investigation, and that spawned the Paget report in the British government because he was pointing a finger at them. I think he took the bait. I don't think he understood they were hung with it. So they had to spend £10 million to come up with this Paget report, which is the damage control document. It was done by police investigators and the Metropolitan Police, and it was shameful, the twisted facts in there. What didn't make it into the Paget report was the ignored evidence of Diana's letter that she penned in hand to her solicitor, Lord Mishkin. Okay, so in America, lawyers are a little different in Britain. Okay, they do things a little bit different in lots of respects. Not bad, just different. They have a different approach. In America, our attorneys they handle all kinds of law. They'll study the law and they'll go in court. Okay. In Britain, it's not like that, so I'm told. They have barristers who study the law, and they have solicitors who go to court and actually, practice the law in court. She gave it to her solicitor, Lord Mishkin, who gave it to Britain's chief policeman, Lord Condon. Condon concealed it for 3 years, who gave it to his successor, Lord Stevens, who concealed it for another 3 years. Why hide something if there's nothing to hide, right? Begs the question. So here we have 3 legally bound professionals who concealed this document for a total of 6 years and kept it away from the wanting eyes of the Paget report. Okay? So in any court, anywhere around the world, what they just did is a criminal conspiracy. You have more than 2 people joined together to perform an act that is illegal. That is the very definition of conspiracy. And here we have it. You don't even have to look any further. You already have it. So the Warren Commission report and the Paget report, no one believed, either one of them. And there were people that came before me who did a lot of investigative work into this. John Morgan was a great investigator. He's no longer with us. He's a great investigator for the Princess Diana case. He debunked 84 lies in the Paget report, and they harassed this man to the point where he had to leave Britain. It's something else again. Mark Lane, my friend who wrote Rush to Judgment, again, someone else who's no longer with us. He debunked 106 lies in the Warren Commission report. Another one who was harassed and discredited like, you would absolutely not believe. I had private conversations with him where I had to get my jaw off the floor because my jaw hit the floor so hard when I heard about all the things that they did to him. So all of these things, they were all, both drivers were different that day. The JFK driver was not the normal driver. Henri Paul was not the normal driver. The parallels again, here we go, right? So no one believed either one of these reports, the Pageant or the Warren Commission report. So they finally were reinvestigated later on. The London Royal Courts of Justice reinvestigated the French dossier on Diana and concluded that Dodi and Princess Diana were victims of, quote-unquote, an unlawful killing, which is their version of manslaughter. However, they never, ever went to investigate who was behind it or bring them to justice. That's where they stopped. And they stopped because that's where they stopped because they knew, both governments knew it was a hit. They knew that's why they didn't go any further with it. They knew she got knocked off by a handful of people acting on intel who had separate motives. A lot of this is laid out in my book. Warren Commission report. Mark Lane started the House Select Committee on Assassination and ruled there was a second shooter in the JFK assassination. A lot of people don't know that. The federal government, the American federal government, actually admitted this. You can go out there and look it up. It's 1976 or 77. And they also agreed that JFK was murdered in a conspiracy. So both of these erroneous reports were both reinvestigated and their information was reversed. History is something, folks. You can't make this up. And I want to talk a little bit about my books. I know we're coming down to the hour here.
Yes.
Where we're going to be up. My books are cross-genre. If you like conspiracy or history or, wow, there's so many things here. Suspense, murder. Someone on your Christmas list is going to love this. These books will never be profitable for me. I have way too much time in them. If I had the means, I'd send this out to everybody for free just so the information can get out. I don't like the fact that these people, and when I say these people who have the power to keep us powerless, can get away with this. For me, it's beyond tolerance.
Right.
So I'm trying to break even. Buy a book for somebody on your Christmas list. Somebody on your Christmas list will love this. It's a stocking stuffer. My books are cheap. They're like $20. And I'll even autograph it. I'm not one of these authors who sends people to Amazon. For me, that's too impersonal. You know, I want to know my readers. I won't say I have fans. That's too uppity for me. I want to know people. You know, tell me how you want it autographed. I'll do it for you. And reach out. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. Go to whomurderedbooks.com. You can click on the Connect tab. You know, I want to hear from people. I want to hear from people who read my work. Because if you lose that connection, you've lost everything. And if you're no longer connecting to the people who are reading your work, you're sunk. That's it. You're done. And I don't ever want to be like that.
All right, let's get to some audience questions here, as we got about 7 minutes to go here. Let's get to Bridget, who is asking, do you know anything about the conspiracy regarding Kurt Cobain's death?
Oh, boy, yes. But again, I know people who write these types of books all know each other. I can't comment on this because I'm helping somebody else write a book on it. So I'm not going to step on their toes. I can't do that. But yes, that was there's a legendary book coming out on that one. This one's going to be good. So yes, I do know things about it, and I'm sorry I can't, Bridget, I'm sorry I can't mention that right now. I promised someone else that I would keep their work silent.
All right. Owner is asking, was Dorothy Kilgallen's death related to Marilyn Monroe's death?
Boy, that's a question. What a great question that is.
Fantastic question.
You know, we'll never know. All we can do is speculate. I would have to say, if it waddles like a duck and quacks, I think it's a duck. I would have to say there has to be a connection there. There has to be. Do I have proof of it? Unfortunately, nobody has proof of it. So I would have to say, from where I sit, pardon me, my opinion on that is yes. But opinions are one thing and evidence is another.
Very true. Very true. Okay, let's continue on here with more audience questions. Sovereign is asking, what are the chances that, deep down, that Princess Diana and people like Michael Jackson are still alive? I mean, we've heard this for years about Elvis.
Well, if Elvis is alive, he's walking around without most of his vital organs, because I know the doctor who still has them in dry ice. I don't know. That's another great question that I don't know we'll ever know until they show up. I just don't have an answer for that. Anything's possible, I mean, just when I think I have all the answers, they change all the questions. We don't ever know. These people seems highly unlikely to me, but anything's possible. I'm in that camp. Anything's possible.
It very much is possible. And there's a lot that we do not know. Hey, back to the Kurt Cobain story for a quick second. When do you expect that to be coming out?
I don't know. I know they're deep in research right now. And in fact, there's I have to mention a Facebook group for everybody. There's a Facebook group out there dedicated to Kurt Cobain's death. And if you're interested in that, join that group. There's a lot of people in that group who share information back and forth. I have two Facebook groups out there. One is Elvis, Who Murdered Him, which I share with a woman named Judy Hunter, who I discovered after I published. She has almost as much information on Elvis's murder than I do, and we share information on that. So if you're interested, go to Elvis, Who Murdered Him, the Facebook group. I've just started one, Princess Diana, Who Murdered Her. So you guys can all join these Facebook groups and interact with me and ask questions and contribute. You're always welcome.
That is excellent. We've got about 3.5 minutes left with you tonight, Steve. We're going to continue on here. What's next for you? You said you got one more book left in you for this Who Killed book series. What's left to accomplish?
Well, I think everybody has a feeling inside of them when they know when to call it quits. I was going to do 2 more books. I was going to do a JFK book. All those researchers do is fight and hate each other, and I'm not going to get involved in that. My next project, my last project, unless something catastrophic happens, is on Nikola Tesla. I think some of the evidence that I have spoken to other investigators, some of the evidence that I've gathered, there's no doubt in my mind that Nikola Tesla was murdered. No doubt. He had some weapons that he was trying to vend to the federal government, the American government. And when they turned him down, he was trying to vend them elsewhere. And that's as far as I'm going to go into that. So Nikola, Who Murdered Tesla, will be my next project. It'll be my final project. And after I do that and do all the radio shows, I'm going to do this thing called Get a Life. It's been a 12-year run, guys. I'm tired.
No, I don't blame you for being tired on that, because the conspiratorial side of everything can be draining and wearing. At what point do you have to make sure as a writer on this that you're not getting caught up in the woo part of everything?
Well, what you have to do, and that's a great question, you have to be Mr. Spock. You have to take your emotions out of it. I'm a huge Elvis Presley fan. It bothered me like you wouldn't believe when I interviewed the people at the autopsy, and I finally figured it out. I had to work very hard to take my emotions out of it. I really did not want to know that guy was murdered. I didn't want to even put a question mark to any foul play coming to Elvis. So to answer your question, you have to be objective. You have to keep your emotions out of it and just let the evidence write it. Let the evidence will guide you. If you're guiding the evidence, you're doing it wrong. The evidence has to guide it.
Definitely the evidence has to guide it, but I mean, it's easy to get blocked into the whole conspiratorial side. This will be my final question for you. So how do you make sure that you're not blending, well, that, I don't believe this, so this must be fake, or that report must be fake?
I don't think I understand the question.
Well,
you cut out just for a second.
Well, just in regards to, as we only got about a minute left here, it's easy to get caught up in the conspiratorial side of everything. That all of a sudden everything you see in the public is fake. Not everything in the public is fake. So I'm just curious how you draw that line.
It's a tough line to draw. Again, you have to follow the evidence of it. If some things have been true, it's a tough line to draw. I think that you have to look at things with a jaundiced eye. I believe Ronald Reagan had a great quote: "Trust but verify." And I think that's what I do best. I trust everything that I hear, but I have to verify if it's true.
I hear what you're saying there. Steve Ubaney, thank you so much. Can't wait to get you back on for the Elvis book in a few months. We'll bring you back on in, and we really do appreciate your time, man.
Hey, thanks very much. You can book me anytime, and if anybody else out there wants to book me, go to my website.
All right. Steve Ubaney, everybody. Coming up next, the fedora-wearing John Hudson returns for another edition of the Unbiased UFO Report. We got Shirky Poo's news and the thought of the day. Stay tuned. Spaced Out Radio continues after this. Great job, Steve.
Hey, thanks. It's a pleasure. Hey, is there any way you can send me a link to this show?
It'll be on our YouTube page right afterwards. And then you could grab it and use it, whatever you want, buddy.
Sure. Let me see. What is so it's Spaced Out Radio on YouTube?
Yeah. Don't forget to hit subscribe, though. You need to do that. All right, man.
All right. Take care.
You too, my friend. I got to get John in here, so it'll be all good. And we'll talk soon and get you booked for Elvis, okay?
Yeah, man. Anytime. Get a hold of me.
All right, brother.
See ya.
Take care.
Bye.
Steve Ubaney, everybody. First off, in my chat room, we do not call people liars. We do not, you can have healthy disrespect for the guest and their opinion on things, but every time you use the word liar towards a guest, you're going to get timed out. It's just the way it is around here, okay? It's the way it is. Doesn't matter whether it's a testy subject like this or whether it's R. Keith Andrews or whatever. We don't call people liars. We don't make fun of our guests. They were generous enough to give time to you guys to listen to. The best thing that I always say to our audience is that we can at least give them the benefit of the doubt. You don't have to believe them, but hey, that's up to you. Very much up to you. So great job tonight, Wrenches, on keeping control. Really do appreciate that. The fedora-wearing John Hudson. What's happening?
Greetings, sir. How are you today?
Oh, man. I'm all right. I'm all right. Yeah? Besides a little bit of audio issues right at the beginning of the show.
At first, I thought it was like a cool effect that had gone bad. It was like, wow, man, Swamp Tool has got this cool echo going on. I'm like, wait, no, that can't be. I
didn't even hear it. It was so clear on mine, and it must have been coming through my headphones or something, because the minute I hit mute on my mic, it ended.
It was a trip. It was a total trip.
Weird. Well, we'll hopefully.
But it was fun to listen. It was fun listening to him, though.
Well, we'll hopefully get him get that back to normal here.
Yeah. Yeah, and that guest, man, that was awesome. Man, I do wish you'd do more true crime stuff. I love that stuff, because to me it goes such hand and glove into what we're doing here. Because in both cases, what you have is you have this propensity in every single system you'll ever look into of just incredibly illogical decisions and poorly executed things. And it's amazing. Like, you'll find this in every single thing you look into. It doesn't matter. You can go look into your religion. You can look into your school system. You can look into your own government. You can look at anything you want. You will find crazy backwards stuff that make no sense to you whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And it's just the way it works. It's just a weird thing.
By the way, a big congratulations to you, Gemma Jade and Big Willie, for a wonderful start to the weekend's after hours programs. Right after Lynn Wallington does a kick-ass job on her interviews, and you guys were fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. It was total fun. It was a great time. It was I had a blast. It was exactly what I hoped to get out of both of them, which is just three very different but very compatible viewpoints, and so I think it's cool stuff. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
I think it's gonna be great too, man. Once the nerves are worked out, it'll take a few weeks. But once the nerves are worked out, I think After Hours is going to be fantastic. And people, our listeners going in to the weekend, I mean, you start off with a couple of fantastic hours of great interviewing skills with Lynn. And then you go into what you guys are bringing to the table, which is very, very, fireside chat type of talk. I think it's great. Yeah. I think it's great for our audience.
And I'm looking forward to once we get the kind of cadence going better to be able to say to people, when people are nice enough to listen to me here, hey, if you want to go into one of these topics more, right, come back and listen to us on the weekend, because these are some of the things we're going to be debating, and your comments are going to be welcomed, and we're going to be inviting people on once in a while, and so it's going to be a good opportunity for you to get more involved in the conversation.
Absolutely. A big thank you tonight to Bridget, Ghost Dragon, Jeffrey ×2, Thomas, and Smithy for the amazing super chats. We really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. And a big thank you to all the veterans and regulars who are tuned in tonight. We really do appreciate it. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And congratulations to Bree as well for taking off on TikTok. Here we go. We've rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate it. Want to remind you that if you missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. Of course, it's time once again for the fedora-wearing John Hudson and the unbiased UFO Report. Yes, John Hudson comes in with the latest UFO news that seems to be racking everything up these days, and he's always keeping us abreast of what's going on. John, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thank you, sir. If I ever get back into public speaking, I'm going to have trouble not having a theme song before I get on stage.
You need a theme song. You can borrow that.
It'd be a ridiculous thing to ask for as a public speaker, but man, it's going to be a little weird not having that.
You know what though? I will say this quickly. I have done a few conferences where they bring me out to Bumblefoot, and little brother is watching. It is weird, man. It is weird than just going up and taking the stage and saying, "Hi, my name's Dave," and
totally,
all of a sudden you hear your music and you're like, "Oh my god!" Here we go. There's no turning back now. I can't ditch it. But now,
this is serious now, right?
Oh, it's on. It is on. By the way. I want to say, and I know I mentioned it during the break here, but for our listeners elsewhere, I want to say a big congratulations to you, Gemma Jade, and Big Willie Townsend for kicking off the first weekend of After Hours. The reviews have been, from our audience, amazing. and that is well deserved on your guys' part, and I think it's going to be something. I mean, it's so strong of a weekend now with Lynn Wallington kicking butt with her interviews, albeit a couple of hours earlier, and then the audience gets to switch over to you guys. Fantastic job, John. Fantastic for you and the team.
Well, thank you. No, it was a great start, and we got 3 dedicated people. We're going to put a lot of time and effort into it, and with a little feedback from the audience, we're going to get real good at this. So hopefully, we'll put on a good show for everyone.
Wonderful. All right, let's kick things off. Former guest on this show and a good friend of Spaced Out Radio, Jonathan Davies. You might want to follow him on Twitter at I Want to Know UK, as he is from the United Kingdom. Recently met on a podcast with a couple of interesting people. Why don't you fill us in?
Well, no, he was on a bloody panel, and I, Jonathan, I don't know if you're watching now, or if you're going to listen to this later, but you and I need to talk, because I want to find out how you got your butt on that panel, because being on a panel with Jack Sarfati and Russell Targ and some other people would be one hell of a way to spend an afternoon that I would certainly enjoy. But this is basically it's not for the lighthearted. It's 2 hours and 7 minutes. It is on YouTube. It is a panel discussion among several different people, and they go into a whole host of different topics around remote viewing, UFOs, some of the history stuff on who Axelrod was in the books. Jonathan does not partake in all of it. I'm not sure anyone really partakes in all of it, but it's a great and it's a very in-depth thing. It's well worth watching. I'll provide a link to it. And I will say this too. It's probably one of the nicest presentations of Jack Sarfati that I've seen. This puts him in a much. This was a good. This was a good look for him.
It was a good look for a lot of people.
Yeah. The panel turned out really well.
So, who do you think Axelrod is?
I don't know. I'm my inclination is that characters in books are rarely one person. That characters in books are usually, composite people, because of the dangers of mapping one person and quite honestly just the cost of developing characters. And so my guess is that Axelrod is some combination of I can't think of right now what the top 3 best guesses are, but it's just like with Gumball, right? You walk up to those Gumball machines where they those games where you have to guess how many marbles are in the thing, and you wait until the very last day, average out what everyone else guessed, and you will get the right answer, right? So it's like you can basically kind of to me. Yeah, to me, there's lots of opportunity there, but it was a very, very good panel, and it's it's a lot of fun to see, especially because you don't get to see Russell Targ very often, and Jack was in his element, so it was definitely well worth watching. I highly advise everyone to check it out, but it is long. It's 2 hours and 7 minutes, so get some caffeinated drink and sit down maybe on a Saturday afternoon.
Well, Jack Sarfati, I don't think a lot of people outside of the UFO world really know who this gentleman is. He is someone who was considered a very big player behind the scenes for a long time on the UFO side, and now there's a lot of people who believe that Sarfati has literally gone off the deep end a little bit. I mean, what's going on here with him?
Boy, would I like to know, and I'll be honest, I've put some effort into this one, because, there are certain aspects of Jack that I really like. And, I'm, full disclosure, I'm on one of his mailing lists or at least I was. Actually, I'm not sure I'm on it anymore. I might have gotten kicked off, but I was on one of his mailing lists for a while. I got to see why I'm not on there anymore. And he is a very clever man. He puts forward some very interesting ideas. He has been involved since the beginning of time. It was a very creepy thing to be reading Cosmic Trigger 1, which is like an old book that came out, I don't remember what year that book came out, but that book came out a long time ago. And Jack's one of the characters in that book, right? It's around the UFO topic. He's been around forever, right? But the problem is that he does tend to kind of go off the rails a lot, and he tends to be very, very rough. He has a very unpolished API, and therefore, he tends to really upset people, and so it makes it hard. But he does have quite a career behind him, and his basically what it comes down to is that when he speaks, he should be listened to, but you have to take what he said and weigh it just like you do everyone else's, because he can get just as excited about something as anyone else can.
All right, and finally on this topic, let's talk about the Collins Elite, because this is a program that not a lot of people, even in the UFO field, know or understand.
Yeah, and so I will. I'm going to differ probably a little bit with many folks on my analysis of this, just because I see it a little bit differently. But the rough explanation of it is that the Collins Elite is a group of very very hardcore Christian folks. So not your run of the mill. These are pretty on the extreme, and they're kind of littered throughout the government. And that they essentially, are part of some cabal that basically pull strings and influence things. I would argue that it's probably true, but painted a little bit different of a picture. In that, I think it's more likely that it's a group of like-minded, hardcore Christian folks within that organization, but it's not as formal as people think it is. I've been in big organizations where I've had friends, and we've each been in influential places, and we've talked about things at lunch that we wanted to do, and realized that we could help each other to do it. It's not necessarily a conspiracy. Sometimes it's just good working behavior. And so to me, I don't know. I'm not happy with some of the results that I've heard from rumor from the Collins Elite. Some of the influence that they've been able to exert, that certainly makes me as nervous as it does anyone else. But I think fundamentally, the idea that there are a bunch of like-minded Christian folks throughout the government that believe a certain thing and therefore act, as a group, to me, that's just human behavior. I don't think that's really that big of a deal.
Really? Okay. So the Collins...
It's like a bunch of people to do sports betting, right?
Right.
I mean, in every company, there's a huge group of people who do sports betting. They have very strong opinions about that world, right? And there's whole relationships that happen in that world that no one else hears about.
Thank you for answering my question before I even had it out. All right, let's move on to topic number 2 tonight with you. UAPX, which is a lot of the people who took part in the 2004 Nimitz incident, combined with some scientists and, former Sunday host here, Michael W. Hall. They are getting ready to release some data that they did on a recent study. Fill us in.
Yeah. So, this is, we heard it. We heard a tease about this when Gary was on with us Saturday night, and this is basically, the data that they've been collecting for some time that they've had to hold on to because of the NDAs that they had in place with the different, media projects that they were involved in. And essentially those media projects will, go published in 2022. And therefore at that point, they become free from their NDAs, and their plan is to release all of their data. Now, they've mentioned before that they plan to release their data. They've mentioned before that they plan to release any videos they've captured and so forth. What we didn't get before was some of the specifics on exactly what they're talking about. And it turns out what we're actually talking about is something around the orders of essentially 3 terabytes of data, including and everyone prepared to drool, 600 hours of infrared video.
600 hours.
600 hours. So let's just assume that only a percentage of those are worth anything, right? So let's say you got 60 hours. Forget that. Let's be really aggressive. Let's say you got 6 hours of good footage, right? Mick West, I don't know where you are, buddy, but have fun. 6 hours. Let's see how you do, right? I mean, that's a lot of content. I don't care who you are. That's a lot of stuff to go through, right? This is going to take everyone a while to chew through. So, it's going to be interesting to see when it comes out. But to me, this is a really exciting thing. And what I'm hoping is that these guys set the precedent. And these guys really set the stage, and these guys set the level of expectations that we can now have against everyone else. That says, look, if you want to do a public project, if you're not going to be the government, then don't be the bloody government and release your damn data, right? Like get it out as fast as you can, as clean as you can, share it with whoever you can, make it as open and free and understandable as you can, and let's figure this out. And I absolutely applaud UAPX for doing this. I don't have a date yet. I'm beyond excited. I'm like, this for me is gonna be like Christmas. This is gonna be, getting that data is gonna be awesome.
Now, all of this literally has come from the same area where the Nimitz incident happened, I believe, around Catalina Island.
Yeah. Well, so maybe. So that is our understanding. Our understanding is that the bulk of the work was done in around the Catalina Island area. However, we do know that UAPX has also, looked into other sites and other locations. Like, for example, we do know that they, did some poking around at Skinwalker Ranch, and so it might be that there's more data than we think. So it'll be to me to see how this turns out.
That's going to be very interesting to see how everything kind of pans out with that. I mean, Gary Voorhees is a good friend of this show, and they've got a very strong team there in regards to it. I know they're hoping, Kevin Day was involved with it earlier on. He was the, main player in the 2004 Nimitz incident as well. So we're going to see where it goes, man.
There's some great folks on that team, and I want to applaud that organization for giving people chances and taking chances with people, but also for cutting their ties and moving on when they find that things don't match. And I think that what they're ending up with is a much tighter team because of it. And I applaud them for it. And if they really produce, to be fair, right? I mean, that 3 terabyte number is all exciting and everything. Of that 3 terabytes, I don't know what percentage that's actually going to be really interesting to like what would be worth talking about, like on a platform like this, right? I mean, it might only be that 10% of it is really interesting. I don't know. I have no idea yet. I won't know until we look at it, but it's a lot of data to start with, and that gives me a lot of hope that there might actually be a fair amount of good raw data to look at, and because there's been some hints at some things. Michael Hall has hinted at some things involving whale song and so forth that are pretty provocative, and seeing any data on that stuff would be fantastic.
Oh yeah, John, thank you so much. We'll get you to stick around for the after hours. Let's get to Shirky Poo's news. All right, let's get to Shirky Poo's news here as we start to move on for the night. Unusual object was recently captured on camera by a skywatcher in the UK named Peter Benton. Yeah, the UK certainly has its fair share of UFO sightings over the years. This recently released clip was filmed by Benton, shows a dark rounded object that he spotted milling around the sky over Stetchford, England back in October. He claimed that he had been filming the moon when the object entered his field of view. I like to film the moon, he says, during the day, even if it's in a crescent. I tend to catch things more frequently this way, as is what occurred here in the clip. He says, I lost track of it and then quickly tried to get it back, but I lost it. It was moving right to left. It had a light on the front and 2 lights or afterburners at the back of the light. It also turns onto its side. The object, which literally looks like, let's say, a pistachio. Yeah, nobody really has an understanding of what it is, but very, very intriguing indeed. Moving on, Time magazine has named CEO of Tesla and SpaceX Elon Musk as their Person of the Year. Person of the Year is a marker of influence, and few individuals have had more influence than Musk on life on Earth, and potentially life off of Earth, too, Times editor-in-chief Edward Felsenthal wrote. In 2021, Musk emerged not only as the world's richest person, but also perhaps the richest example of a massive shift in our society. The tradition from Time began in 1927 as Man of the Year, and has since changed to not only recognize an individual, but also consider the impact of a group, movement, or idea that has the most influence in the past year. In 2020, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were picked together as the Person of the Year. The annual choice is not necessarily considered an honor, since the selection could have been wielded negative influence. For example, Adolf Hitler was the Man of the Year back in 1938. Time has also evolved the tradition into a larger franchise by introducing additional categories in 2019. This year, pop star Olivia Rodrigo was named Artist of the Year, and four-time Olympic gold medalist Simone Biles was selected as Athlete of the Year. The title Heroes of the Year, previously known as Guardians, went to the scientists behind the mRNA COVID-19 vaccination, specifically Catalin Carrico, Barney Graham, Kizzmekia Corbett, and Drew Weissman. Time was also able to add new categories because the company is no longer part of a larger magazine conglomerate with competing titles that deeply covered sports and entertainment. All right, moving on. Temperance, Strength, The Magician, and Wheel of Fortune. No, not game shows. These are cards that photographer Laura Schaefer, digital artist Tabitha Swanson, and astrologer Good Horoscope discovered that they all had in common during tarot card readings last year. Keen to depict the mysticism of tarot through a lens, the Berlin-based artist embarked on a project to build CGI celestial words inspired by the cards. We did some search and research into elements and objects historically within the cards, as well as poses of figures in decks from hundreds of years ago, says Swanson. We worked on mixing those elements with a modern twist, translating the figures and symbols into new media. Each card has the number of tarot etched within a 3D structure. This result is a 4-part series featuring Good Horoscope in various otherworldly fantasy scapes. Industrial silver cogs are juxtaposed against the soft lavender skies, while smooth alien creatures and structures emerge from pinkish thickets. Yes, tarot has officially gone 3D. And we'll wrap it up with this one. More than 40 runners donned Santa suits and hats and swimsuits to participate in Budapest's annual Santa Claus jogging event. The annual event, known as Naked Santa Run and the Santa Speedo Run, was canceled due to the pandemic last year, but it returned this year with more than 40 goers through the run. It gathered outside Go Active Fitness Center, and they began running at 2 p.m. local time, covering a distance of about 2.2 miles. And participants were given a 50% discount at a local spa to warm them up from the frigid run. Thought of the Dave happens every night at this time, where we ask a question on our Facebook and Twitter pages, then read your responses on the air because, well, we love the audience participation around here. Today's Thought of the Dave is as follows. Let's get it for you. What famous person's death caught your attention, and why? And of course, StreamYard decides to go to hell here. For God's sakes.
Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. for you to break. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We watched you for so long.